Hello, I wanted to continue on with this drawing so I can show you what it looks like as you start to build your values and then as you start to work your textures. So I have multiple range of pencils, and it's good to have a lot of different lead weights so you can get a dark area, like a very deep shadow, and you can still layer on top of the lightness of the paper and still be able to erase with those really harder pencils like your HB and your 2H. So it's really good to have that variety when it comes to doing a drawing like this, especially in graphite. This graphite drawing does require that sort of arrangement and variety of materials so you can start to make these marks. So as you can see, I've started to layer in different values from my lights to my darks, and that's important before you start finding your texture. Now, texture is something that is simulated in this sense, so we're looking for realistic texture. Obviously can't be actual because if you touch it, you're just going to be touching the paper, but we're starting to fool the eyes in a sense by creating this realistic texture. And so what I want to do is I want to start building, maybe working on these rude raksha beads over here that I've already layered in this really dark value. So they're deep red. So they're one of the darkest areas in my drawing. And so I just want to show you as I start to find a texture, I'm going to layer another dark kind of value in there. And I have my blending stump that helps push this pencil mark in, and that'll start to smooth out that line. Although I don't want to smooth the line completely because this bead, which is a seed, is full of irregular marks. So I'm going to kind of move my pencil around the page irregularly, haphazardly, not really planned. Then I'm going to look and see in my still life if there's anywhere I can kind of pull out some lights again, so kind of down the center of it. But for the most part, it's a very dark area. There's a little bit of a shadow right here between my beads. Now I'm looking at the line, and so the line of some of my objects, the edge of it, the edge needs to be soft or hard. So my beads, the edge is going to be hard because we're looking at something that is of a harder texture. This is, if I were to bite down on it with my teeth, it would not give, it would be solid. And so I want to create that sense when I start to draw. And so as I start to move up my beaded area, I'm going to create a darker value. And again, I'm going to start to layer that irregular line. Now, as you see, my fur scarf is a soft line. Nothing is harsh. I don't have any line that's really sharp or any sort of sharp edge at all. It's very soft because this is fur, and so there's billions of little hairs that are layered on top of each other. So I don't want a harsh area around that shape, but my beads, I want a nice kind of sharp line in some sense in some of these areas. And so that's why I'm going to use my dark pencil. I have all the way up to a 6B pencil, and so that's going to be a pretty dark area that I need to get. And so I'm going back and forth with my kneaded eraser and my dark and light pencils. And again, I'm building my form, and I'm finding what these beads look like as they're layered back into space, and they're in a shadow, and they're pretty dark. And then these beads right here, they're on top of these ones, and they're underneath this mink scarf, this fur scarf. So these little hairs are sitting on top of these beads, which is why I've left this line very blurry and kind of fuzzy. So as I layer that that value in, I'll push it in with my blending stump a little bit because it's much darker there. And it's very dark inside the crease where these layer like a little puzzle piece next to each other. But to start to get that kind of texture of the fur that layers over these beads, I'm going to bring in my kneaded eraser, and I'm going to make it in sort of a point, finding this kind of ridge at the edge of it the edge of my eraser, and it'll want to cave in on itself with the pressure that you apply, but you can get a couple strokes out of it, and this will help to start to bring in that area that looks like fur. And then you can go back with your pencil and start to define some of those fur-like strokes you found with your pencil, and that will start to enhance or simulate the idea of fur. So going back and forth very carefully, but also, you know, I'm making sure I'm following the direction that the fur is moving in. As you can see, all through my drawing, I have followed the direction throughout each. Up in here is my fur scarf as well. I'm going to start to blend in this value that I found here with my pencil. So I layered in with my HB pencil these lines, these linear lines. I like to do a lot of linear and cross-hatching when I'm doing my graphite drawings, and leaving some of those linear lines that you found as you were drawing with your pencil available so you can see them will help also to enhance this look of fur and to exaggerate it in a sense, make that look a bit more realistic than flat. Again, this edge is very soft because I'm going to be pushing out these lines, these hairs with my brush, sorry, not my brush, with my blending stump and even my pencil. And as you see, you can actually draw with your blending stump. You can make light lines and you can kind of blend with this even if there isn't a mark down. So I'm kind of blending this in, and I'm also going back and I'm going to look and see how dark this edge is where this light shade meets up with this darker edge. This is sitting in front of this area, so this is behind this, so I want to start to work in that shadow. And again, I'm working in a linear way, so all my lines are kind of moving in one direction, but as it's fur, it starts to move back and forth. It doesn't always go the same way, so I'll start to move my lines as I see it moving with the scarf itself and how it follows the form of the scarf. And I'll push those in as best as I can, but also leaving some of them because they're important to showing that fur texture. But what I want to do is I want to find value first. So I want to see the darks and lights working within each object before I really start to go in with those tiny details like the fur.